Bard on the Plains podcast with Mike McPeak. It's about stories, mine and yours.
My musical tastes tend to be a little cyclical. I discover an artist, listen to their music somewhat excessively until I get tired of them, and move on to my next new greatest artist of all time. I will do this a number of times until I realize I haven't listened to an artist in quite a while, go back, listen to them again, and then the cycle starts all over again. I've done this recently with John Mellencamp. I discovered him in the early 80s. This was my fourth or fifth rediscovery of him. I like his music, though. It's rock mixed with bits of country and folk music. This reflects the music I grew up with. Rock music was in its early stages of development, trying out different sounds and trying to find a voice. But my folks were square dance, so I was exposed to country and western music along with Lawrence Welk music they like to listen to. John, whom I suppose had a similar upbringing, has composed these songs that has really appealed to me. My two favorite songs of his are Rain on the Scarecrow and Small Town. Scarecrow resonates with me because it came out at the height of the farm crisis in the 80s. I was managing the farm for Mom and we were struggling. We never had to sell any land, but we did have to make some sacrifices. So to hear someone get up and sing about what we were dealing with made a great impact on me. Small Town is a happy song about what it's like to grow up in a small community. Having rediscovered these songs did get me to thinking about what it means to have a community to live in. As I write this, it's the end of August in the year of our good Lord, is it over yet, 2020. For those listening to this podcast in the future, let me do a brief recap of things that have occurred so far. The year started out fine, but by February there were things being said about some new virus going around. By mid-March, it had turned into talk of a pandemic that pretty much shut down the whole country for a while. From there, we struggled to open businesses with new words like social distancing being thrown around, along with old ideas like wash your hands and cough into your sleeves. From there, it went from suggesting everyone wear masks to you had better wear a mask or you're an evil person and people will die. So you can see that the fear and uncertainty were escalating to hysteria and overcompensating. As we were trying to get that all sorted out, race riots broke out and cities were being burned and looted. Things were so crazy, subjects like murder hornets and UFOs were barely even got anybody's attention. So up to this point, 2020 has been real craptastic. Oh yeah, and there's an election going on, which brings its normal level of social discord to an already turbulent year. So I'm listening to John Mellencamp and watching civilization descend into what I can only hope is temporary chaos. But it did get me to thinking about what community means. Community means different things to people and is determined to a certain degree by where you live. I have never lived in an inner city community, so I can't say if my observations would work for them, but I do think they are worth considering. Living in a small rural community is a strange mix of rugged self-reliance and dependent interconnectivity. A lot of people were farmers. To be a successful farmer, you had to be tough, resourceful, and fiercely independent. You knew the decisions that you made would affect not only your life, but that of your family as well. There was a sense of pride and accomplishment that came from overcoming obstacles and learning from our mistakes. But we also knew we didn't live in a vacuum. We knew we needed a strong community to support one another. Whether it be a state, a city, or township, the services these groups provided aided the individual in their own self-development without making them dependent upon the organization for survival. This is a delicate and difficult balance to maintain. Not enough support in the individual may not get the resources they need, and too much can place a burdensome obligation that keeps them from growing. But people also knew that sometimes government wasn't enough or wasn't the right answer. They realized that they had to come together as a group to accomplish something. Here's an example. My hometown of Willow Lake wanted the swimming pool. Even though there was a lake nearby, it was surrounded by cow pasture, so the water quality wasn't the greatest, and there was no lifeguards, so safety was a concern. Money was available from various government entities to assist in building, but it was not enough to finish it, so the community had to raise the bulk of the money if they wanted it done. It took several years to raise, so there was no instant gratification. You learned if you wanted something, you had to work for it. Every year a quilt was made along with other items to be raffled off. Us kids would sell the tickets. There were prizes for the ones who sold the most tickets. I know this isn't a new idea, but back then fundraisers weren't as prevalent as they are now. Since I liked winning prizes, this pushed me out of my comfort zone to talk to people I didn't know in an effort to sell more tickets. Although this did improve my salesmanship abilities and people skills, it didn't really get me any prizes, but I digress. The raffle coincided with the Halloween Carnival, which, besides being another fundraiser, was also a reward for selling tickets along with being a community-building activity. All this work taught us kids that if we want something, you have to work for it, and since they put that much effort into it, they will take some pride of ownership in it and take care of the pool and treat it with respect. Another example of learning about community for me was the Future Farmers of America. I've talked about the FFA before and have done a whole episode about them, but I will reiterate for the purpose of this discussion. We were taught not only about improving agriculture, but also about building our communities. Our advisor was always getting us involved in different activities that helped improve our town and the surrounding area. Were our communities perfect and without problems? No, but we were able to sit down and discuss them without fights breaking out, most of the time. And if we did disagree, we would shout, but we didn't burn the town down. But as I look around the country in September 2020, I'm not seeing that kind of community. Instead of using our differences to make ourselves better by introducing new ideas to improve our condition, they are being used to divide us. I call this checkbox communities. The more boxes you can check off, the more of a grievance you have. Christian, check. Atheist, check. Black, check. White, check. Gay, check. Straight, check. Rich, check. Poor, check. Now take your scorecards and add them up and see who the winner of the victim contest is. Now use this score to whine about how much someone has to give you to make your life better. Notice nothing is said about taking responsibility for your own actions or considerations for the groups around you. It's all about you. This is not the principle that this country was founded on, and certainly not what made it great. I'm trying to make a political statement without getting into politics. All I ask is for people to honestly look at your own life and see maybe if it's not as bad as you think. We actually live in really good times and in a really good country. A lot of diseases that would have killed you at a young age have been cured or controlled to a very manageable level. Even the poorest in this country live better than my grandpa McPeak did when he moved here in 1887. He had to build a sod house to live in and had to work with his neighbors to make a living. Nowadays, there's all kinds of social programs to help anybody who needs it, and they have the opportunity to improve their life if they wish. Who really gains by us fighting amongst ourselves? I'm not going to point any fingers. I will leave it up to you. All I want is for everyone to stop bickering for a moment and look at the big picture. I know when people are fearful, they want answers and they want things figured out. This is also a good time for somebody to step up with all the answers if you just let them run things. Just give them some of your rights and your freedoms for the greater good. Ask the question, is this for the greater good or for their own good? Obviously, we must make compromises, but ask questions and demand answers, and don't settle for, I know what's best, or because I said so. Be informed and get information from all different sources. Nobody is unbiased. Everyone has an opinion, no matter how hard they claim they don't. This can be overwhelming, but read what you can and trust your instincts. Which brings me to my next point. Develop a moral compass. I know religions get a bad rep nowadays, and some of them deservedly so. But at its core, any good faith should teach about the importance of self, that being control, reliance, respect, and responsibility, balanced with the needs of the community. I'm not picking a church, that's up to you. You use the same principles as above. Research and ask questions. And if things don't add up, don't be afraid to move on. But this is a good starting point for learning about the importance of self versus community. But most of all, quit being a victim. Yeah, people do bad things and they need to be punished, but don't let that ruin your life. Learn to be strong enough to deal with what's happened to you and don't be afraid to ask for help when it gets too much. Because every victory makes you stronger and better able to handle the next challenge. It also helps to pass on the knowledge you have gained to assist someone who is going through the same thing, just as someone helped you along the way. So it's time I wrap up my little diatribe. Am I saying that small towns have all the answers? No, they have problems with bigotry and distrust of change and outsiders. But I do think they do hold some examples about hard work, supporting one another, accountability, and survival. And in these difficult times, God, I'm sick of that phrase, of adjusting to the new normal, nope, not happening, by social distancing, not good for growing a community, to flatten the curve, we need to spread the community and not worry so much about community spread. Like the good book that I believe in says, love thy neighbor, not shoot your neighbor. Engage in contact tracing by actually talking to your neighbor and be a super spreader of love. In the meantime, relax, rediscover some old music, and reflect on how good you have it. But until the next time, remember that you're the author of your story.
If you have a story you'd like to tell, contact Mike on Twitter at bardontheplains or by email at bardontheplains@gmail.com. For more information about the stories in this podcast, visit bardontheplains.com.